This video is first in a series talking about the integrated rental system in TransActPOS. The first thing we need to look at before creating any contracts or moving forward is the company setup section for the rental area of TransAct Point of Sale. So we will go to System, Company Setup, put in our credentials, and we're going to scroll down here to the Rental Manager, page 1. So on this page, we have several different settings for the rental area. One being when your weekend begins and when your weekend ends. This is important if you have a weekend rate for your rental products. Over here, we have the overnight begin and end, which you can set by either a time of day, or you could select this and say it's an hour before close or after open. Here you can customize the buttons for the rental checkout and check-in area. This checkbox here blocks the rental item upon return and opens a service ticket for that rental item. Now, we have the full-on integrated service module, and then we also have a service module that's specifically for rental. And what that does is when you have that service module, you can only use it for internal purposes for your rental items. And so either way, if you have the full-on integrated service or you have the service department specifically for rental, if you want your rental items to be blocked and reserved for a service ticket when you return them, you would check this. And in order to use the service side in association with the rental, you need to have these specific things set up. Traditionally, when you create a service ticket, you assign it to a customer. And so what you need is a customer to use for the store's rental service tickets. So you can set that up in customer setup, and then this would be the customer that you reserve there. You can select that by clicking this ellipsis and then selecting that specific in-store customer. The ticket status, this would be the default ticket status that is set when that service ticket gets created. And you would go into the service ticket section to create this different statuses if you don't have a rental service one already created. Same thing for work type. This is the default work type for when the service tickets get created for the rental items. And then for preferred, if you happen to have someone who they were the person who always worked on the rental equipment, you could select that employee here so that every service ticket that gets created from a rental contract or from a rental check-in is preferred to that particular service person. This section about revenue to cost ratio and resale percentage will be covered in its own video. Moving on here to Rental Manager page 2, this is where you set your store time, open and close for every day of the week. Now, one thing that you need to consider is, does your rental department open and or close at a different time than your store? In this section, you need to put what time the rental department open and closes. They may be the same or they may not be. Here, you need to denote what holidays your store is closed for so that it can accurately calculate the holiday fee if you have a holiday rental fee. Here you can set the day prior and day after for a holiday. Down at the bottom here, we have various settings and things that you can activate by checking the boxes. These first two, the get rental times first on new contract and the hide prompting, this is usually checked by default on the get rental times first. So before you continue on the contract, once you select the item, this is saying that we're going to go ahead and select how long the customer will have this rental item for. The hide prompting, this is something that was more geared towards customers who do not use the rental wizard. In new stores, by default, we do use the rental wizard and the rental calendar, which we will see on these other rental manager pages. The single entry item search is a similar thing. With the use of the rental wizard, this is not as relevant of a checkbox. The turn on rental grid loop, whether it be at the point of sale or in rental, when you have the grid loop, you can sit in the grid and select items in the grid does not either close or go back to the beginning. So you could sit there and do that. Most stores, it would be set as this without this being checked. Use hourly rate for meter hours only. If you want to do that, you can check that. Hide payment button. If this button is checked, what that does is it hides the payment button on the rental form, and you don't see that until you are ready to invoice the rental contract. This reset on cancel checkout, what you can do is when you go to check out, it can prompt to take a payment. If you don't want to take that payment now, maybe you want to do that when they check it back in, you could hit cancel. But if this is checked and you were to hit cancel, it just cancels the entire contract. The invoice checkout and scheduled, this forces you to invoice the item at the end of the creation of the rental contract. So whenever the invoice amount is due at checkout. So as you can see there as the tooltip, which by the way, if you hover over these, you can see sort of a little more detailed explanation. Rate for open days only. This means if your store is closed, you're not going to charge for those days that you're closed. And then here is the exclude 4-hour rental rate once time exceeds 4 hours. Moving on to page 3. These are some items that you need to have if you for fee items, for damage waiver, and for fuel charge. So you need to make sure you have an item for each of those things in your inventory. This again are items that you need set up for selling rental equipment, and we will cover that in a separate video. And then here are your GL account numbers for your rental assets and rental department. Rental manager page 4. These rental rates are required if they are checked. So if your store, if you do an hourly, day, 24 hours, week, and month, for example, in this one, you would check those. In this current example, we do not require a 4-hour rate. We do not require overnight, weekend, or holiday, as you can see. Down here, we have checked Utilize Rental Calendar and Rental Wizard. These are checked by default. Now with new stores, we have some stores who have used rental for a while that don't use the calendar or the wizard perhaps, because that's the way they've always done it. But the rental calendar and the rental wizard are the way to go, so those will be checked. Allow invalid rental times and stock levels. I don't advise checking this box, but if your rental times and stock levels are off and you just want to be able to rent stuff anyway, you can check that. But again, probably not the best idea to go about that route. Better to have accurate stock levels and knowledge of what's going on. And then here you want to check this if an ID is required for all of your rentals, like a driver's license, etc. And once you have all these sections filled out and you're comfortable with the company settings, you'll be ready to move on to creating rental items and contracts.